Welcome to Tech Talk with Craig Peterson, show number 724. Today we're going to be talking about summer, all kinds of cool summer technologies. We've got Apt Electronics back with us this week. Last week they talked a little bit about what they have available for the boating community and people who like to go fishing. And this week we're going to be talking about smart TV, some of your options out there. We've got a satellite messenger joining us. Find Me Spot. Now, this is cool if you are someone who likes to go hiking and maybe wants to try and stay safe, keep your family informed. We'll be talking about that. We also have the Vitamin D Council with us today. Now, many people aren't aware of it, but vitamin D is extremely important for your health, and you do get it from the sun. However, we just don't get enough from the sun in the northern climes. In fact, in order to get enough vitamin D, typically you have to be living somewhere around the equator and walk around all day with no shirt, no pants on. So we'll be talking about that and deficiencies and what you can do. And by the way, it doesn't only help you to not burn, it also helps you to not get skin cancer and a bunch of other things. In fact, if you're watching me on YouTube right now, lifting up my arm, you can see on my arm, I actually have a tan. I have never done that before, but I've been doing the vitamin D regimen now for about a year, and it's made a very big difference in my life. So we invited them to be with us today. Magellan's going to join us talking about their handheld GPSs, great for the summer. We'll be talking with Grocery IQ about their shopping app. We'll be talking about the Strive smart pedometer that gives you rewards and third-party rewards for you exercising, just walking around. Ion Audio is going to talk a little bit about their iCade. Now, this is pretty cool. It has a bunch of the old games that we used to play back in the 80s and 90s and put it all together on your iPad. And this gives you the controllers that you're used to for your iPad to play the games. LogMeIn is going to join us. We have their president with us, and we're going to talk about smart TV, specifically IPTV. This is a whole new trend that everybody's getting into. Sony's going to be getting into it, and in fact, they already are, and a few other competitors, including Apple. In fact, I'm going to get to an article here in just a couple of minutes talking about the latest entries from Google and Apple into the TV space. So we'll do a little comparison of those. So as usual, when we start out the show, we're also going to do some reviews of articles in the news this week. We're going to talk about the NSA. Blueprints are out. They were just leaked this week of their new data center in Utah. Turns out not as big as we thought. In fact, it just won't hold as much data as anyone had thought. We're going to talk about a very cool crowd-funded project here to make a lens for cameras, today's cameras, that's straight out of the 1800s for photos, and particularly for portraits. I love this lens. This is cool. If I had the money, I'd get one. Forbes here, one of their reporters hacked a smart home from thousands of miles away. So we'll talk about that, how dangerous that can be for your home. Mercedes-Benz is integrating Google Glass into its cars. And by the way, in the midst of all of this, we've got West Virginia and now the UK who are both planning on banning Google Glass when you're driving. So I don't know how that's going to tie into what Mercedes is doing, but we'll talk about that. And the fracking here in the U.S. This would be a fun show to do, talk a little bit more about energy again. But fracking, some people don't like it. Many people love it because it's lowering gas prices, energy prices in general. Well, it turns out the Saudis don't like it very much. So we're going to get into all of these articles here in the news right now. I also want to remind you to go to craigradio.com. Click on the links there to Twitter if you like to keep engaged with the conversations about these tech items in the news. You can also, of course, do the same on Facebook, although Facebook isn't as good anymore as it used to be, because even if you like my page, you're unlikely to get my posts. It's kind of crazy. Anyhow, be that as it may, I'm trying to get up to 1,000 likes there on Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn too. So you can watch me with this part of today's show on YouTube anytime. Even in your PJs, as they say on some shows, mine included. So have a look there, craigradio.com. Now, I want to remind people who are listening, who are business owners, that what I do for a living is help businesses with technology. So if you're interested in contacting me, you can also do that at the Craig Radio site, or just go to craigpeterson.com. There's a little form you can fill out, just contact information or set up an appointment to talk a little bit. And what I do primarily in my company is help small businesses, usually 50 to 100 employees. 250 is kind of the higher end, that need help with technology. You know, everybody has a tech person already there in their shop. Usually the tech person is whoever had the most inclination for it. So what we do is we support that tech person. We support the business. We make sure you stay up. Those critical emails that you have to get from customers, we make sure you get them. The critical websites that have to stay up, we make sure they stay up. That's what we do, and I'd love to hear from you. If you could use a little help with any of this, helping to make sure you don't lose revenue. And we have plans that start very, very cheap for a business, $147 a month. So it's phenomenal. Love to hear from you. Again, if you have any questions about it, or if you have a business that might want to find out a little bit more, go to either one of two things, craigpeterson.com, that'll get you to me, or you can go to the website at mainstream.net, and right there you'll also see a little bit about some of our offerings. You're listening to Tech Talk with Craig Peterson. We're about to go through some of the articles in the news this week, and let's get started on that right now. You'll see these, by the way, articles if you watch this on YouTube. You can kind of follow along at home. And also, another big advantage here is that if you follow me on Twitter or Facebook and you like a posting that I put up there, or you forward it or retweet it or comment on it, I will go ahead and talk about the most popular articles. Obviously, I don't talk about them all, but because we only have time for about 4 or 5, and I usually put 20 to 40 a week out there, depending on what's happening. And those articles that you guys like, that you forward, that you retweet, I talk about here on the show. So we get into a little bit more depth. And when people ask me about things, too, I'll look it up and we'll talk about it here. So, starting out here, this is from Sky News. Of course, this is UK. I follow some of the UK stuff because their media will report things our media here, except for, of course, yours truly, won't report. I do report on these things. This first one is about a Saudi prince. His name is Prince Alawid bin Talal, and he said that Saudi Arabia needed to reduce its reliance on crude oil and diversify its revenues. Why? Because the United States is cutting the global demand for Saudi oil. Now, we're not doing this with troops on the ground. We're not doing this through political pressure, trade embargoes. No. We're doing this the old-fashioned way. We are drilling for oil here in the U.S., we're pulling it up. We're pulling up more coal than ever. We're pulling up more natural gas than ever. Why and how? Well, not because of the federal government. Obama's done everything he can to make sure that we cannot get access to most federal lands where there is oil. Oh, we can get leases for lands where there's no oil, but not where there is oil. This last week, President Obama came out and said he will not allow the pipeline to go through the U.S., the oil pipeline from Canada. So how is this happening? It's happening on private lands, and it's happening through a technology developed here in the United States. It's now being used around the world, including in the United Kingdom. And that's called fracking, where they use high-pressure water underground once they've basically dried out a well, and that cracks much of the shale deposits and other deposits that are underground and causes the additional oil that's in there to be released, or gas. And guess what? We have an oil boom. I'm sure you've heard about it. Certainly if you listen to the show, you've heard about it. So now the Saudis are getting worried because we're only importing, I think, 10% of our oil from that region of the world now, and frankly, it'll be even less. So he's very, very concerned here. He says Saudi Arabia's heavy dependence on oil was a truth that has become a source of worry for many. U.S. and Canada, of course, sharply increased our exports of oil and gas and coal, as I mentioned a little bit earlier. The prince said our country is facing a threat with the continuation of its near-complete reliance on oil, especially as 92% of the budget for this year depends on oil. Oh, now isn't that something? We're going to see some major changes here. They're looking for new companies. The Saudis are investing in new technologies. Anything just trying to get away from the dependence on oil. And I don't know how successful they will be, frankly. And remember, this isn't just the Saudis, it's the whole Middle East. What will happen when we continue to increase our exports of oil and decrease our imports, and of course, ultimately, decrease their exports from Saudi Arabia to other countries, because we'll be providing it too. Good news for us, our oil prices, our energy prices are going to continue to go down. Next article here on Tech Talk with Craig Peterson. Mercedes-Benz is integrating Google Glass into its cars. Now, I've got to say that this isn't happening anytime soon. Mercedes is working on it. Now, Google Glass, kind of the accessory for nerds at the moment, but their primary goal of Mercedes integrating them here is to make a navigation system that seamlessly moves with the wearer from inside the Mercedes-Benz to outside the car. Once you leave home, it knows you're going to drive. You tap your glasses, you talk to them, you get the car warmed up, everything integrated. So that'll be interesting. And of course, as I mentioned a little bit earlier here, potential problems because the new laws proposed in West Virginia. Other states are going to get them. Don't worry, California and Massachusetts will be the crazy ones, and New York and New Jersey right up front banning these things, and the UK as well. So we'll see what happens with that. It's kind of a cool idea. Now, Google introduced their Chromecast, their brand new this week $35 dongle. What this does is let users stream their entertainment over an HD TV. Now, that's kind of cool. You plug it in USB, you plug it into your computer, and off you go. Well, Apple has their Airplay. And here in this article, and you can find it again by going to my Twitter feed and have a look for Chromecast. But right here is showing the supported features of Apple Airplay versus Google's Chromecast. Both will do Netflix and YouTube. Chromecast does not do Hulu Plus, does not do HBO Go, does not do Pandora, does not do Spotify, does not do Rdio, does not do mirroring. They both do 1080p playback. The dual screen gaming, only on the Apple. Streaming, only on the Apple, although Chromecast has some cloud streaming. They both have third-party APIs, but Apple is the only one that has third-party certified hardware, and of course, the only one also that has a hardware remote. And obviously, the Google Chromecast runs on all of the standard platforms you'd expect. It's iOS, Android, Windows, OS X, and Chrome, whereas the Apple is only running on the Apple operating systems, iOS and OS X. This one's in the scary department. This is a Forbes reporter who hacked a smart home, in fact, more than one, from 1,000 miles away. This is based on a mistake here, a hole that was exploited on Insteon smart home systems. And apparently these Insteon devices had a vulnerability that allowed anybody to gain control over the home. Now think about this for a minute. You think, so what? They turned on and off the lights. Smart homes will open and close the garage doors. They'll unlock and lock the front doors. They'll turn on and off your alarm systems. So what do you think is going to happen if a bad guy hacks into your smart home and goes ahead and turns off the alarms and opens the garage door and walks right in? Opens the front door, whatever it might be. So this is kind of crazy, and they used Google to find the homes that were hackable. I love that part, because the little web browser or web server that Insteon was using was exposed to the internet from everybody's home. Bad idea. Again, that's what happens when you don't hire professionals. You get people like me involved. That wouldn't happen. Lomography's Kickstarter-backed Petsville lens. Very cool. Coming out for portraits here. These are the f2.2, very narrow depth of field portrait lenses that were used in the 1800s and the 19th century. They are gorgeous. I'd love to have one myself, this Petsville design. So you can read more about that again on my Twitter feed. And the NSA, we've been talking about that a lot. You know, today there are some more articles out We'll have to talk about this next week. But talking about a brand new program just uncovered this week where the NSA is keeping everything on everyone. They can tap into your live stream of web browsing, of emails, of data on all of the major carriers. Google, apparently Apple, Microsoft, all compliant in this. And almost anyone at the NSA, without any real oversight at all, by even a supervisor, can track what you're doing in real time. Doesn't that make you feel good? I'm so happy the government cares about me that much. And by the way, their documents say that they've stopped 300 terrorist attacks by having all this information. But it's unconstitutional for them to do what they're doing. And if one person's life is saved, is it worth it? How about 300? Well, that's the argument they're going to make. Stick around. We're going to be right back with more Tech Talk with Craig Peterson. And we'll be talking about summer right here and online, craigradio.com.